All right, God's grace, His mercy, His peace be yours today through Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen. Let's pick it up in Revelation chapter 13, and we were looking at the first beast, if you recall. We'll just read down through a little bit of that. Well, let's just refresh. Let's just say that. The first beast, if you recall, this is all Antichrist. The two beasts are both Antichrist. The first beast comes out of the what?
Sea.
The sea. This is the place of chaos. I have it represented here, this one, as a Roman soldier, because we looked last week at it being representative of the Roman Empire. But it comes out of the sea, and what looks good about it to you? Answer: nothing. It's a very evil-looking beast. It has blasphemous things that it speaks. It's upon its heads. It has haughty and blasphemous words. It rages against the church. You can see the blood on the sword there of the Roman soldier. Let's see. It has a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the Revelation 13:3, just around there. So the devil gives it its authority. It's really the symbol for secular power in the world, I believe, amongst all the world nations, but especially exemplified in the Roman Empire. Why did we say it was the Roman Empire? Because it says it has it was like a leopard, its feet like a bear's, and its mouth like a lion's mouth. So we have the leopard, the bear, the lion. We looked it up in Daniel chapter 7 last week. Remember, that shows that there are going to be these three kingdoms, and after that a fourth kingdom, worse than the rest. And so, obviously, this image here from Daniel 7 is relating to Revelation 13. And if you read these kingdoms in Daniel, it seems to be pretty consistent throughout his book. He's getting different visions of the same thing. There are four kingdoms. There was also Daniel chapter 2, this guy, which was the picture given to Nebuchadnezzar in a dream, the king of Babylon. And he had a dream, remember, and he couldn't have anybody interpret it. He called all of his magicians and his sorcerers and his wise men and such, and they couldn't interpret the dream. In fact, doesn't he say there, tell me the dream and then I'll know how you know how to interpret it. Well, no man can tell you what the dream is, they all say, and they're all freaking out, and the king of Babylon wants to slay all of his wise men and all of his magicians because this dream was so powerful and he wanted it interpreted to him. And Daniel says, why is the anger of the king so hot? And then the man sent to Daniel, really probably to assassinate him, says, well, because the king had a dream and no one can interpret it to him. Well, tell the king I will do that for him. And that night Daniel receives from God the interpretation of the dream. He goes to the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar says, can you tell me the dream and interpret it? And Daniel's answer is quite shocking. At first, he's like, no, only God can do that. And God's revealed it to me, and I'll reveal it to you. And he tells them the dream. O king, you saw a head of gold, and then arms of, what was that, silver? Bronze. The torso, I have to refresh myself on this. I thought that was bronze. And then the feet, partly of clay, partly of iron, partly strong, partly weak. Well, what's the interpretation? Well, you, O King Nebuchadnezzar, are the first one, the head of gold, which is representative of the kingdom of Babylon. All right? And then after you shall arise another one, that was going to be the Medes and the Persians. And we know that that's the case in history as well. We saw that come to pass. And then the kingdom after that was the Greeks. Would arise after that. And then the one after that in the fourth kingdom would be a very strange kingdom, just like, remember, the fourth beast here was strange and different from all the other ones. This was going to be Rome. And what was the picture is that the king saw a rock, a stone cut by no human hand coming down from heaven, and it smashes the image and it destroys all the kingdoms here represented. And from this stone, God sets up a kingdom that will last forever. The stone cut by no human hand is from heaven, not cut by a human hand. It comes down and it strikes, and God's going to destroy all the kingdoms of the earth in the days of the fourth empire, which is actually Rome. When did Christ come? When was he born? In the days of the Roman Empire. So there, Daniel is already telling us several kingdoms yet to come that weren't even knowledgeable that they would come in those days, but Daniel was given the vision. The king was, actually. There'd be that one, then this one, and then the fourth one, God would set up his kingdom. So there you have it. God had it all planned out very nicely, didn't he? Then you get over to this one. It also has 4 kingdoms, just like the dream here. What do you think those are? Babylon, Medes, Persians, Greeks, and Romans again. Hence, this beast that represents all these things is really a combination of all secular powers, but especially the Roman Empire. And then also, if you look over at Daniel chapter 8, let's just look there briefly. Daniel 8. Daniel has a vision of a he-goat and a ram, etc. And this is the next chapter after, obviously, Daniel 7. And just look, for example, at verse 15. When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it, and behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, and it called, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, Understand, O son of man, that the vision is for the time of the end. As he was speaking to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and set me on my feet. He said to me, Behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end. As for the ram which you saw with the 2 horns, these are the kings of Media and Persia. That's amazing. He knew even before it ever happened that there was going to be the kings of the Medes and the Persians. And the he-goat is the kingdom of Greece. So there, God doesn't even leave it up for interpretation. This is what it means. Right? And the great horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 others arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. And at the latter end of their rule, when the transgressors have reached their full measure, sounds like today, a king of bold countenance, sounds like another one, Antichrist in super capital A, Antichrist, one who understands riddles shall arise. His power shall be great, and he shall cause fearful destruction. And shall succeed in what he does and destroy mighty men and the people of the saints. That would be us. So that's a troublesome word, isn't it? It's like what we read in Revelation 13, that the beast prevails over the saints when he conquers them, wages war and conquers them. We read that previously in Daniel 7 too, that he prevails over the saints. I explained last week that the prevailing is not spiritual. Namely, he doesn't conquer your spirit, you conquer him. But physically, he does prevail over the saints, according to this, right? So I believe that means, to a certain degree, the war in the world for influence in the world, the Antichrist gets the upper hand toward the end of time, toward the appointed end of time. We kind of see a little bit of that kind of now, don't we? Like, You can't meet anymore. Anywhere around the world, churches, you must be closed. Interesting. I wonder, I don't know, but it kind of sounds like what we're looking at right now, doesn't it? By his cunning he shall make deceit prosper under his hand, and in his own mind he shall magnify himself. So he'll think, I'm great, I'm number one, I'm the chief, I'm the top dog, when in fact all he is food for worms, because God's going to strike him down when he thinks he's at his peak. Without warning he shall destroy many, and he shall even rise up against the prince of princes, but by no human hand. There it is again, right? A rock not cut from any human hand, just like the previous vision. A rock not cut by a human hand, by that he shall be broken. That's Jesus. The vision of the evenings and the mornings which has been told is true, but seal up the vision, for it pertains to many days hence. So the vision's sealed because it's for a long time from when you live, Daniel. In the book of Revelation, though, John is told, don't seal up what you've been given, because the time's near. There's a difference there. Daniel, you got a long time to go. Just seal it up. It's for later on. John, keep the book open. It's in your time. It's coming quickly. If it's near for John, it's really near for us. And Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for some days, just like he did at the previous vision. I was kind of overcome for some days when it wasn't because of COVID, not at all. It was a kind of thinking, what's going on in the world? And it sure looks like Daniel 7 and 8. And I was thinking, I guess it's not too strange that I should be somewhat changed in my visage and my countenance changed and my color changed, when I was thinking, whoa, could that actually be? Yeah, but that's all right. Daniel was too. And God quickly brings us out of it. Then I rose and went about the king's business, but I was appalled by the vision and didn't understand it. And indeed, these things are kind of mysterious, aren't they? You can't totally nail them all down. But I was going to show you the video here, but I'm not getting the electricity to work at the moment. I'll figure that out for another week. Remember in Daniel 7, where it says in verse 25 of the Antichrist, he shall speak words against the Most High, blasphemous like this one, right? And shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law. And I was going to show you that vision, the video of that police officer, without even knowing it. In May, he was saying they're changing the laws. They're thinking to change the laws. They're changing the laws. And I was like, remember when I saw that in May? That police officer who was saying that he thought this coronavirus thing was a political maneuver. I was like, I heard him say that, and I'd just been studying this, and I'm like, he said changing the laws. I'm like, that's what the Antichrist is going to do. So, and it's not just in one little tiny place, it's all over the world. So I can't tell you for sure if this is what we're seeing, but it certainly seems like it could be. I'll put it that way. So that's why I'm saying that this is very likely the Roman Empire, but it's really representative of all secular powers of the world, rule of the governments that are opposed to Christ, that are against him, which God is going to strike down. And we see that in the days of the Roman Empire, it was very oppressive, especially at a certain time when the persecution came to the church, where if you don't submit to Caesar and call him Lord and God, actually there was a word for the Roman Emperor Domitian. He was addressed as Dominus et Deus Noster, our God, our God and our God, our Lord and God. That's what it means. So you had to address Caesar or Domitian here as our Lord and God. If you didn't do that, because you have to be submitted to that government power of the world, or he'll kill you. Hence, we see that kind of thing, perhaps then, well, at least in this passage, had a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. I don't know precisely what that means. I'll just give my best estimate of it. If I'm wrong, God correct me. I'm okay with whatever your truth is, Lord. But if you think of the Roman Empire, It was strong at one point. It received a mortal wound, but it still kind of lingered in all the kingdoms of the world, and as we'll see in the kingdom of the papacy. And I'm wondering whether perhaps, and I don't know, but perhaps toward the end of time there is a sort of resurrection of that toward the end of time. Its mortal wound was healed. It continued to live. Though it looked like it was gone, it sort of remained. Being the fourth beast, being the kingdom here, the fourth one here, being the Roman Empire, at least an image of that sort of persisting. And certainly that's been the case throughout time, right? All of the world governments, except for sometimes they're Christian, but a lot of times they're not, and they're arrayed against the Christians. And we've seen that a lot down through history. All right. And authority was given it, verse 7, over every tribe, people, and tongue, and nation. So this is a worldwide secular power of Antichrist amongst the governments of the world that rages against the church, wears them out, and eventually, toward the end of time, prevails over them in terms of their influence in the world. There has to be, according to Daniel, a shattering of the power of the holy people, the saints. I don't really like those verses in the sense of, I don't want to be shattered, but it's not me personally or you personally. It's, to some degree, our influence in the world is overcome by the oppressive forces of the secular powers of Antichrist, such that the church's voice and influence in society is kind of conquered or crushed. Because, why? You have to have a climax, as I always say. You have to have the bride get into trouble toward the end of time in order for the hero to come in and go, dun da da da, here I come to save the day. And at the last moment, take care of the villain, dispatch the foul fiend, marry the bride, and have a happily ever after. I mean, God's got a wonderful story. But you will never be conquered spiritually. And hopefully, physically either. Hopefully, God watches over our bodies for sure. We just have to entrust ourselves to Him for that, because sometimes the saints do suffer. They killed John Huss. They killed John Tyndale. They've killed a lot of people. The spirit of Antichrist in the world. So that's where we are. So the saints, though, everybody will worship this, follow this world power, this secular Antichrist amongst the governments of the world. You can't fight against it, they say. It's a fearful thing. Who can resist? But the saints resist. All those who are not written before the foundation of the world in the book of the life of Lamb that was slain will worship it, but the saints will defy royally, boldly, gloriously this and stand strong and tall for Christ. But we're called to endure for that. All right, so any questions on that one as far as I go? That's as best as I understand it. If anybody has a better explanation, I'm open to it. Verse 11. Let's go to the second beast.
Where are we?
Revelation 13:11. I've been jumping around verses 1 through 10 of Revelation 13 with some references to Daniel 7 and 8. Yeah, I was. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's take a look here at Revelation 13, verse 11. We're going to see the second beast of the vision. Then I saw another beast. Sorry for the heavy breath there.
That was kind of a prop.
Almost, yeah, right, yeah. Second beast, which rose out of the earth, and it had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It works great signs, even making fire come down from heaven in the sight of men. And by the signs which it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, bidding them make an image for the beast, which was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast should even speak, and to cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is, the name of the beast, or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let him who has understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. Okay, I think it's pretty clear, so let's go on. No, just kidding. No. This is amazing. This is fantastic. Shouldn't joke even at all. So the second one, I'm going to say, is, well, let's look at this first. It comes out of the earth, right? So what is the earth? It's a much more civilized place than the sea, according to biblical imagery. So it's a much more civilized looking beast. So if the first one looks foul and black, it's an evil looking evil beast. The second one is a good and righteous looking evil beast. They're both evil beasts. They're on the same team. They are of the same father, the devil. They're of the same ilk. Yet this one looks good and is evil. The first one looked evil and was evil. Luther would call it kind of like this, at least he described in general terms, maybe not of this passage, but there's the black devil that is black and looks evil. Then there's the white devil who looks good and is also evil. Which one's more dangerous? It depends on your opinion, because this one is just rages and is wicked looking, but it's like, I don't know what you could say, like a black panther with blood coming up and coming after you. This one looks like a dove floating around, but if you touch it, it'll kill you. Yeah, I remember, yeah. Well, this one especially is the deceiver. This one, it's not spoken as much. I mean, he does deceive the earth. Yeah, that's what it does say here. I think. Anyway, but not as sneaky. I have to look that up. But I think the main thing here is this one. Deceit is much more front line with the second beast. Adrian Rogers, I heard on the radio one time many years ago, he said he had a missionary from some Eastern Bloc country under communism visiting his church several decades ago, and he said, where he was on the Eastern Bloc communist country, he said, we have to deal with the devil as a prowling lion. He looks evil, he is evil, and we Christians have to exist underneath this communist regime that wants to get us all the time. He says, I came over here to America to visit you, Pastor Rogers, and what it seems is in America you have not the devil appearing so much as a prowling lion, but as an angel, masquerading as an angel of light. The spirit of compromise. Ours is the spirit of violence, yours is the spirit of compromise. They're both wicked, they're both against the church, but he says, I prefer the one in the Eastern Bloc because you know where you stand and you know who the enemy is and you fight against the enemy. Over here, it's all mushy, wish-washy, hard to discern which way is up and wrong and right because it's the church being compromised into all false doctrines. He says, I would take the prowling lion anytime over the devil masquerading as an angel of light. I think that's kind of what we're looking at here, the prowling lion and the devil masquerading as an angel of light. Pretending to be righteous, but let's look at what it says here. He comes out of the earth, so that's more civilized than the sea. It had two horns like a lamb. That sounds lovely. Looks like a Christian, because Christians are lambs. We're sheep of his pasture. And, notice, but it spoke like a dragon. So it looks righteous, like a Christian, but it speaks like a devil. So this is going to be false Christianity, I believe. The way I've looked at it over the years, and I think Lutherans have for 500 years, the Holy Roman Empire is this one, at least symbolized in all the secular powers of Antichrist. This one is like the spiritualized Roman Empire, namely the Holy Roman Church has become so, and headed by the papacy, which would be Antichrist. I'm going to do a whole class maybe next week on that one if we finish this chapter. We'll see whether that's the case or not, whether we can make the case that the Roman pontiff is the Antichrist, the spiritual one. Now, of course, it's all false Christianity. It's not just the Pope, but he is the head of it. And we can certainly see what he's been doing lately. He's been calling for a one-world government, actually ever since the 1950s at least, but especially lately he's really chiming in for a one-world government, which would be what? Resurrecting the image of the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. An image of the beast, an image of the Roman Empire. I don't know if that's the way to read that, but I wonder. But notice, it looks like a lamb, it speaks like a dragon. It exercises, verse 12, all the authority of the first beast in its presence. So the two are working together and coexist, same time. And it makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. Yeah, so that's interesting. If the Roman pontiff is especially embodying of this, and if this second one is the Holy Roman Empire, it's interesting that the Pope is really pushing right now for a one-world government. I'll give you the quotes, where he's saying, we need a one-world government that has authority over all other nations, and everybody has to submit to this one-world government. He's been saying that lately, and even historically down for the last decades too. But he's chiming in more and more about that one. It's like, interesting. So this one makes all the earth worship the image of the first beast. Anyway, that's a possible interpretation. I can't vouch that that's entirely correct, but it seems like it might be. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, worship the first beast. So worship the Roman Empire, spiritualized too, but also worship the Antichrist power in the world amongst the secular ones. Okay, it works great signs. Notice this, the first one wasn't said to work great signs. This one works great signs. Seemingly spiritual powers are at work in it that look like signs that God would work. Even making fire come down from heaven into earth in the sight of men. So that could be symbolic, like all of Revelation is symbolic, right? But we also know that in the Roman Catholic Church, you have a lot of major signs seen by a lot of people. Can you name any of them? Oh, any of you previous Catholics?
Early 19th, there's a couple that you mentioned.
Our Lady of Fatima, right? Portugal. You have Our Lady of Lourdes. There's another miracle in the Grove there in France. And there's Our Lady of Guadalupe. There are other miracles attached to that. But I think about, when I think of fire coming down from heaven, and I can't say that this is right, but it makes me think of Our Lady of Fatima. That was an event supposedly witnessed by thousands and thousands of people, where they're all gathered because of the vision of some children, and they were all getting together, and everybody supposedly, or most people there, saw the sun move strangely across and kind of careen down toward the earth, and everybody was like taken up by this big spiritual fervor. But other people that were there said, no, we didn't say anything. The sun stayed right where it was. But other people said, no, it was going woo, 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 careening down to the earth. And some of the churches around are named Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Church. And they consider that a great sign. Of course, Mary appears, doesn't she? In this one she appears, and she wants all the world to turn to her or worship her, something along those lines. I'll have to look it up for next week. But this spiritual, Christian-looking, speaking like a devil, deceptive, Antichrist spirit is working signs, miracles, The devil can work pretended miracles. Did you know? You have Moses throws his staff on the ground, and then the devil, or the Pharaoh's magicians, throw their staffs down, and by their secret magical arts turn their staffs also into snakes. Of course, God's staff swallows up their staffs. And then they're even able to turn, Moses turns the Nile into blood, so they turn some water into blood. You can do magic arts and satanic things. The devil has certain powers, and God, in this particular case, allowed them to have certain powers, I believe, because he's just like, come over here, let's have a little contest. I'll let you do a few of these little things, a few of your little tricks, and mimicking what I can do. And then I always picture it like, they're throwing a little paper airplane, and God's on an F-15 taking off the carrier deck. He's like, okay, can you follow this one? They're like, that's when they go to Pharaoh and they say, you better let these people go because you're dealing with the real God on this one. We can't match him at all. So the devil can work certain signs and wonders, and he works that to deceive through this Antichrist spirit. Right? And by the signs which it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth. Okay, so it's special work. This spiritual Antichrist is deception, and we see it so very many places. We're not just talking about the Roman papacy here, but all the spirit of false Christianity in the world. There are many people with big pointy hats, which, so thankful we don't have that. I would never want to wear one of those. It looks ridiculous. But anyway, that are promoting the most foul doctrines and classic abominations against God, promoting sexual promiscuity and of certain kinds that God has certainly condemned throughout time and given evidence of by throwing fire and brimstone down from heaven, but they promote it, and promoting offering children to Balak to Molech or Baal in child sacrifice, namely abortion and such things. Okay? But they deceive those who dwell on the earth. Oh yeah, we're good, we're righteous, we're wonderful. Go in this way, Christians. I'm the Pope, I'm the pastor, I'm the bishop. Do what I say, it's all lovely. When in fact they're speaking like a dragon, but looking like a Christian. Okay, so, it deceives those who dwell on the earth, bidding them make an image for the beast, which was wounded by the sword and yet lived. An image of the beast. I don't know exactly what that is, but if you think of it, the Roman church is set up like an image of the beast, spiritually. It's like an image, it's set up like an image of the Roman Empire, the way it's structured. It also could have something to do with promoting a one-world government that looks like the Roman Empire, or it could be something entirely different. But just think about that. It works with the secular powers, an image of the beast. I don't know exactly how to interpret that, but so that the image of the beast should even speak, and to cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. I don't know if that is the Roman Empire causing it to have this is an interpretation, could be wrong, but if it were a one-world government type of thing, which they're promoting right now, and have been through the United Nations for some time, and the Pope promotes that, and then goes along with that to slay those who don't worship it. I don't know. We'll have to see. But at any rate, I can't fully, perfectly interpret these things to you. I don't think anybody can. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let him who has understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it's a human number. Its number is 666. I don't know. I've seen lots of 666s around in various things, especially with space and NASA. for example. That's why I'm not necessarily in total agreement with everything that is taught about cosmic worlds. The Earth's axis is at 66.6 degrees off of horizontal, off of vertical. No, off of horizontal, because they always say it's 23.4 degrees off of vertical, but it's actually 66.6 off of horizontal. Also, if you look at the northern latitude, or the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle, they're at 66.6 degrees north and 66.6 degrees south. That's interesting. If you do the Earth's curvature is 8 inches per mile squared, which sounds pretty fine, but then you put that into decimals, it's 0.666 inches per mile squared. It's the curvature of the Earth. Then you get to the speed of the Earth around the sun. Remember looking it up one time, 67,000 miles an hour approximately. So I'm like, I bet I know what the answer to that is even before I do any calculations. And I'm an English major. I don't know math. I'm like, I bet I know the exact number of the speed of the Earth around the sun without even checking it out. And I looked it up and I saw this description of it, and the guy had equations going on for pages. I mean, I could never follow. I'm not a math guy at all. But amazingly, I got the right answer. 66,600 miles an hour. 666. Goes along with Freemasonry, too. Has a lot of 666s in it.
So focusing on earthly things, all these.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it seems like some people really like that number.
I mean, the earth as opposed to.
Yeah. Well, the 666, of course, 6 is, as most commentators say, is an imperfect number because God's number is 7. 7 is a holy number, 7 days of the week. God's number is usually 7. It's a symbol of completeness. This is, some people say, the unholy trinity. 666, imperfect human numbers. They're human numbers. And it's like an unholy trinity between the devil and the two antichrists.
Focus on the world rather than on the spirit.
Yeah. Also, I heard this way back from, I think it was Bill, the guy that drew the picture out here, which is Naomi's godfather, way back. I remember when the internet first came out. I didn't like the internet, still don't really, in a sense, but in the late 90s when it came out, I remember it was www, it was the World Wide Web. I'm like, I don't trust this thing at all. I don't trust anything that's called a web. That speaks of a spider, right? And then I was like, the other name for it is a net. I mean, how dumb do you have to be to think that this is good? You know? And then Bill, the guy that drew the picture back there up from in Maine, he said the www, this may be a little stretch, but that word, the vav in Hebrew, the W, is actually the number for 6. So it's 666, www. I don't know if that's the case or not, but nevertheless, interesting. But nevertheless, you can see that these two are working together, although we're going to see later on they actually attack each other. Because in later chapters of Revelation, we're going to see in like Revelation 17 or so, we're going to see a woman clothed in scarlet, looking really gorgeous and beautiful, with a cup of abominations, seated upon a beast that's foul and evil looking. And you see the two of them there again. But eventually God puts it into their hearts to destroy each other.
He kind of looks like a woman anyway with that red skirt.
I don't know. I wear the robe up here, so.
But it's not short.
Yeah. So, but they work together, and notice there's a mark that's coming. That's why there's been so much talk this year, of course, about the mark of the beast. Let's just put it up here as an X. Everybody has to take a mark. Let's just say it's going to be a mark on your forehead or on your hand. Some will use. In fact, when I taught this 10 years ago, Richard Shore was here and he said, "Well, that could be a microchip." I said, "Well, I don't think it's a microchip." I will say why. I don't think it's a microchip or even the vaccine. A lot of people have said that over this last year. It's been a big topic, of course. I mean, there's gazillions of videos on that one. And a lot of people believe it is, but I don't think so, for this reason, at least at this point. Number one, the vaccine is in your arm, not your forehead or your hand. I believe that the mark here of the beast is invisible, as seen by God and angels. Why do I believe that? Look at the next line in Revelation 14. Then I looked, and lo, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000, that's the saints, who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. So Christians have a mark. We're marked already and sealed. And what do we have? Jesus' name and our Father's name on our foreheads. Is that seen by men? Is that physical? Can I go up there and read on your forehead, Jesus? Well, I can certainly see it in your eyes and in your confession of your mouth, but I can't read it. It doesn't literally say Jesus physically. And therefore, since the Christian's mark is invisible, I believe also the Antichrist's mark is invisible, as seen by angels and God. When it says it's a mark on the forehead or the hand, most commentators say that's because the mind agrees with it by what you do with your mind and following the kingdom of Antichrist in the world, and by your hand by doing what your mind has set itself upon. All right, so notice though, who makes people take this mark? Is it this wicked, evil Antichrist over here that makes you take his mark? Because the mark of the beast is the mark of the first Antichrist, the world government of spirit of Antichrist. But is it this beast that makes you take his mark?
No.
Who is it? It's the second one. It's the spiritual good-looking Antichrist that causes everybody to take the mark of the first beast. Isn't that interesting? It's the spiritual false church, and I would believe papacy, that is causing the entire world, deceiving it, looking like a lamb, speaking like a dragon, deceiving the whole world by the signs it's allowed to work, causing all the earth to go after and worship the image of the first beast of the Roman Empire, thereby to damn them by deception. That's quite a devilish plot, isn't it? You've got a good-looking one and a bad-looking one. Good cop and bad cop, but they're both dirty cops, if you will. That's why earlier in this year, I was concerned about, and I still actually am concerned quite about the vaccine, dangerous-wise, but in terms of being a mark of the beast, I said to Art and Dan, I said, well, let's look at the end of the year, and we haven't heard a whole lot about the Pope. Let's see what the Pope says about these things. Let's start looking toward December, January, when these things might roll out. Let's see if the Pope starts to come into more prominence and start pushing people towards these things. I will say that a lot of the things I've been researching are kind of scary. I don't like to look into them because, you can't, all the talk is on the stuff right now. You are not going to be able to travel the world unless you have a vaccine. And you have to have, what you have to have with it is a vaccine certificate, passport, and unless you have the passport, you can't travel. And in fact, we saw that, Bill Gates said that back in March or so. I have the video I could show you. He said that in March. He says, unless, we're going to have everybody vaccinated, 7 billion people, and we're going to have some sort of certificate of compliance if anybody wants to travel the world. He was saying that back in March or April. I have the video. And now here we are a year later, and he's saying, we see you can't travel, or very soon you can't travel without a certificate.
Endorsed by China today.
Endorsed by China. Yeah, so that's why, even though I don't say I don't see that the vaccine is the mark of the beast, but I do say it has a lot of similarities to it in terms of, submission to the world authorities, the one world government, and being able to, here it says buy or sell. I was just watching a video today about this because I'm concerned for Naomi's trip to Albania. I'm like, is she going to be able to get there and back before they require these things? Because I don't want her to get stuck over there and have to get, a vaccine shot that I'm not in agreement with. I'm like, oh, could she get stuck there? And I'm researching this, and I saw Delta is considering it. Qantas is already saying you can't fly without this. And then they say also you won't be able to go also to any store. Well, you won't be able to go to sporting events or concerts or other things unless you have this on your phone. And even though I'm not saying it's the mark of the beast, I'm saying it has a lot of similarities, and it's not mandated yet. But I mean, what if it were mandated? What if you can't do anything? What if you get? I mean, that's why most Christians across the last year have been like, I wonder. Sounds kind of similar,
Like a duck,
huh?
if it walks like a duck.
Yeah. But I have other reasons for not wanting to, not recommending it. Although, if someone has gotten it, I'm not going to look down on that person. It's their free choice. They can do whatever they want, and maybe it'll help. I hope it does. But according to my research, I'm not in favor of it.
In Qatar or Qatar?
Huh?
In Qatar, Qatar,
Yeah.
however you pronounce it, they have the vaccine card. You can't go anywhere.
Oh, really? In Qatar, you can't travel without the card.
You can't go to a store or to a house or wherever. So
Yeah. Here I'm going on a bit, but yes, you already can't do that there. And a lot of people that have been trying to look at this stuff over the last year have said, the United Nations has been planning to get a one umbrella government over all the governments of the world for some time. And I think it was ID 2020, which came out and voted on, I think, in 2017 by the United Nations, which is where they wanted to give everybody an identification marker or number, just came to me, number, in the whole world, starting or so in ID 2020, if you look up ID 2020. So they want to give everybody a number or a certificate of citizenship in this earth that we live on, because so many people don't have it yet. And I'm thinking, that's kind of interesting. So I'm not totally sold out one way or another on these things, but I was even concerned earlier this year. I was like, remember I told you Dan and Art, I was like, you watch later on, a number of months from now, let's see if the Pope starts really pushing these kinds of things, because if he does, that could be kind of troublesome. If he pushes it, because he's the one that could make the whole world go after something. Because he's got all the world, all the nations, etc., go after listen to him and stuff. So if anybody has had that, you have not received the mark of the beast. I don't believe so. I believe it's invisible. Your mind has not gone after these things. Your hand has not gone after these things. I don't believe that. So I'm not going to harm anybody's consciences that way. But I'm saying, well, I have some other reasons for not recommending it. And some of the things that we're seeing in the world seem to be similar to this in terms of lack of mobility and ability to enter into various parts of society unless you submit to the world power. That's at work right now. And so that way it does seem kind of similar in those ways. Before we conclude for tonight, let me just end with the really good news. Is that if you look at Revelation 15, we'll just jump ahead for a second. I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. So what's it tell you about Christians? We win. And you're also not going to submit to it. That's another reason I do not believe that the vaccine is the mark of the beast at the moment anyway, because Christians are taking it. And the Christians will not take the mark of the beast. Therefore, if you've taken it, you haven't received the mark, because real Christians are taking it. Therefore, God will not permit that to happen. But there could be something coming along down the road that is similar to this that we do need to watch out for and avoid. But notice, it might seem like all the world is kind of creeping in on us and there's no way to escape and everything. But guess what? That verse just told us God has a way for us through all these things, that you escape these things and are able to stand before the Son of Man. So that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Because God provides a way. He always opens a way. When Pharaoh comes and charges after you and there's nowhere to escape because there's a sea in front of me and an army behind me. I'm hemmed in, Lord. Oh, don't worry about it. See, you walk through, enemies follow, I'll destroy them, you'll come through on dry ground. I got it, God says. Relax. I've got the way. Just follow me. So that's a beautiful word. We have victory and triumph before us. All right. So next week, we will look at the Pope and see whether he actually would be a spiritual manifestation of the spiritualized Roman Empire Antichrist, and whether there's any water to that, if we can show that at all. Okay?